Because we're going to have a lot of jobs from building infrastructure to coding, creating new apps. I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
It's Britney, bitch.
And Iraq, everywhere like such as.
I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Out, Shirley! Out!
Our next door neighbors are foreign countries.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Remember Shuffle. My name is Ben. With me as always, my co-host Giordano.
Hello, great to be here.
I'm trying to place that voice. Who is that?
It should be obvious.
Yeah.
Prepare for shuffle and make it double.
And today we are joined by a longtime listener, first-time guest, John. Say hi, John.
How you doing, guys? I've been looking forward to being on the pod. Glad it finally happened.
We brought John on because today we are discussing the global phenomenon, Pokemon. And he is the biggest Pokehead that we know.
Jonathan is my cousin, and I asked him if he had seen all 3 Pokemon movies. And you pointed out that there are over 20 and that you've seen them all, and many in the original Japanese.
Yeah, I think there's 25 as of right now. I haven't seen all of them, but I watched up until the 3rd generation, so it's 277 episodes. It was a fun ride.
And I also brought Jonathan on because I knew it would help bolster my case that, Jonathan, you're born in 1996. In the year 2000, you're like effectively 3 or 4 years old, and yet still a rampant Pokemon fan, because I wanted to open this episode by just addressing the Dawn fan in the room, because many of you might be saying, Pokemon, excuse me, isn't this a 90s product? And I'd like to say, at first gave myself a legal defense to say that, hey, this is a 2000s product, that I could say in a court of law, I could defend myself, when I'm tried for doing a 90s thing on my 2000s podcast. But I actually now sincerely do believe that this is more of a 2000s thing in America. I think no doubt 90s Japan. But Pokemon is really only relevant in America in the year 1999. But let's go back to January 2000. What is the most popular children's media franchise? I think it is without a doubt Pokemon as the decade starts. And I'd like to introduce a little counterfactual for you. So Bill Clinton is actually the president of the United States for the entire year 2000. And yet Bill Clinton's not a 2000s president, right? He is a 90s president. So my point here is that Bill Clinton is as relevant to the 2000s as Pokemon is to the 90s, right? They are each in the mix for 1 year of this decade. But the majority of Pokemon's influence and life is actually happening in the 2000s. The years 1999 and 2000 are the most important years for Pokemon when it was at the height of its success. 2001, it'll drop off and decline from there. But one of its key years, the year 2000, when we actually see a lot of the games you remember, like Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Gold and Silver, Crystal, all of these are coming out in the year 2000.
And the reasons for discussing Pokemon on this podcast are self-evident. It is the best-selling multimedia franchise of all time, at least according to some of the sources that I read. The MCU wishes it could be this successful in terms of just sheer profitability. But beyond its real-world profitability, it does actually lead to some kind of interesting questions. When it comes to the analysis of children's media, you got 2 basic schools of thought. You got your Marxist school and you got your American school. And the Marxist school is going to see global capitalism in action. In this view, the children really have no agency. It is all just sinister, profit-driven marketing. How can we make as much money as possible? Well, here's 5 different income streams: TV show, video game, manga, movies, cards, of course. Whereas the American school actually sees that children are famously very fickle consumers. Children's fads come and go all the time. And so they see children as having far more agency, and it's only the most adept companies that are actually able to ride the lightning of children's whims. And Nintendo and Game Freak and the many companies that got involved in Pokemon are all this type of company.
The point that this episode is going to come down on is Pokemon is consumerist and the product of a globalized corporate system that found the way to make the most money. But if you're going to be acted on by global consumerism, then Satoshi Tajiri, the guy who created Pokemon, is the best case scenario of who you want creating the global consumer phenomenon.
For children.
For children, right. He is an otaku, a term that we'll use throughout this episode, sort of an awkward nerd. Someone with specialized knowledge on one topic. He's created a world to speak to all of our inner otaku.
The otaku honorific was originally used for grandmothers and whatnot. It came about at one of these anime conventions where everyone was really passionate, really into this thing, but maybe didn't have the best social skills. And so they started semi-ironically addressing each other as otaku, and then it stuck as a label in the Japanese honorific system. I think I mangled that half-remembered detail. I'll have to do a fact-check and post.
Before we get started, what are some of your favorite Pokemon?
Honestly, I think that my favorite would probably be Charmeleon. Just, I think it's the coolest. It's the almost weird as this is to say, the teenage bad boy of Pokemon. So.
Pidgeotto is cooler than Pidgeot, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like I think some of the second evolution lines of the Pokemon are actually some of the coolest designed Pokemon. I think sometimes they go a little over the top with some of the final evolutions.
Yeah, they're all fucked up monsters by that point.
What about you, Ben?
Probably because I was a little younger when I first encountered Pokemon, I am kind of a sucker for the Kawaii. I like the first 3 cute guys. I like Squirtle, Bulbasaur, Charmander. I like Pikachu. Magikarp over Gyarados till I die.
Really?
Wow. Come on.
Dumb-looking fish? Oh, I'm bringing him to the Elite Four. Splashing all over the place.
There's got to be someone who has like a playthrough using only Magikarp. I think my favorite Pokemon is Labubu. Is he a Pokemon?
Yeah, George seems like a low punny type of guy.
Right over my head.
Basically, it's a very attractively designed Pokemon. If you look up Lopunny, there's a lot of people who sexualize that design of the Pokemon.
Oh, I could see this one going nuts at furry conventions. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, before we get going, bibliography and then a roadmap. Because this is, much like Pokemon itself, a sprawling episode for a sprawling topic. So for our bibliography, Giordano cover to cover read a book called Pikachu's Global Adventure. I hopped and skipped around it. It was a little too academic for me. It was triggering for me for my past academic life.
It's a collection of 9 or 10 academic essays. And one of the issues with a collection of essays, they all end up reiterating the same points. Because if it's one author, you can try and not repeat yourself. But there's a lot just saying the same thing over and over again in there. Would not really recommend this book.
Giordano also read a book called Monster Children by Daniel Dockery.
Yeah, this one's amateurish, but I enjoyed it. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
I read a book called Pure Invention, How Japan's Pop Culture Conquered the World by Matt Alt, which is an excellent book that I would recommend. It's not about Pokemon, but Pokemon is obviously going to feature heavily in a book about late 20th century Japanese pop culture. And I watched a documentary called The Story of Pokemon from 2024. Now, when I'm doing my research, I do some Googling looking for sources. And I love a good documentary. They frequently give us clips that we can put in post. I find this documentary, it's from 2024, it has an IMDb page, budget of like $100,000. I start watching it, and it starts out like a real documentary. There's some talking head interviews, yada, yada, yada. But I start to notice that the voiceover is entirely an AI slop voice. And gradually, as the thing goes on, they just have stock footage. And as they get beyond the 90s and the early things, they are just listing each generation. The next generation was Pokemon Sword and Shield. The favorite Pokemon from this one were and they would have just the most unhinged image. So If they wanted to say at tournaments the dragon type was too powerful, they would just have a medieval dragon flying over a city that exploded out of nowhere. If they had the word power, they had stock footage of someone opening up a rocket launcher. I got swindled into watching an hour-long AI slop documentary. I still learned some things, though, I guess.
They'd be like, Dragonite is a dragon type Pokemon. And then they would show you like a dragon from Game of Thrones. This is just entirely AI generated.
And finally, of course, we watched Pokemon the first movie. We watched a handful of episodes of the TV series, and we replayed some of the games. So for our roadmap for today, we're going to discuss the prehistory of Pokemon. Then we'll discuss the video game since it came out first. Then we'll discuss the trading card game, the TV show, the movie, the manga, before, as always, turning to our themes and big ideas and closing with our echoes in the culture and closing thoughts.
So let's just lay the groundwork historically for how did Pokemon come to be? I think that people vaguely are aware that it's owned by Nintendo, but I don't think people fully understand that Pokemon is a Nintendo product in the same way that Mario and Luigi and Donkey Kong are. I remember as a kid always being impressed at how quickly Nintendo got the rights to Pikachu and Jigglypuff to put in Super Smash Bros. No, it's just because they own the rights. Pokemon is a Nintendo product. Started by one Satoshi Tajiri. This is the otaku man we mentioned earlier. He is a fascinating guy, doesn't do a lot of interviews, sort of shy, but he started in the games business by writing a fanzine for arcade games. This guy is a nerd at heart. Never went to college, learned programming to turn his magazine about arcade games into a game development company.
Yeah, Game Freak, right? You may remember those words when you booted up your first copy of Pokemon back in the day. Game Freak was a magazine that just started making games. Incredible.
And just a quick note, we keep mentioning this term otaku, and it's just like a subculture of, imagine when someone says a Star Wars nerd in English, right? Otakus will have a specific subject that they are super nerdy and find all-consuming, and it'll be traditionally tied to one subject. So that's the type of person he is. Someone who isn't necessarily very socially adept, but is nerdy.
Satoshi Tajiri was only 30 years old when the games were released in Japan. Goddamn.
Oh.
That's so impressive. And as soon as the West gets word of him, they're writing things like, Tajiri is the kind of person the Japanese call otaku. They know the difference between the real and virtual worlds, but they would rather be in a virtual world. And what I find so fascinating is that he quite literally did invent his own digital world and digital nature as a response to the destruction of fucking capitalism. Because he grows up during Japan's boom times, before the crash in 1990. And he grew up going out into the woods, capturing bugs and animals. He tried to spend as much time in nature as possible. He's quoted as saying, there was so much nature then. I felt like I was surrounded by living things. I'd catch tadpoles and crayfish and raise them at home.
Yeah, he wanted to be an entomologist as a child.
Which is crazy, because the bug type is fucking weak in Pokemon, am I right? But by Satoshi's teens, all of that nature was paved over by new housing developments. His favorite fishing spot disappeared and was replaced with a video game arcade. So when there were no more animals and no more nature to experience in the real world, he made his own. I think this is so grim and also possibly prescient. We are also living in a time of the collapse of biodiversity, and you know our Silicon Valley tech overlords are going to be like, there's no more rhinos, but there are rhinos in the metaverse. Get in the goddamn metaverse, people.
Yeah, he grows up in a Tokyo suburb, and that's such a beautiful idea that he has this romanticized vision of his childhood where there was life everywhere and a natural world to explore and document.
And it's all the grimmer because, as most people know, like in 1990, Japan's economy collapses and a bunch of these places end up abandoned. Like if you've ever seen Spirited Away, where they go to the abandoned amusement park at the beginning, that's musing on, we built all this stuff and now we don't even get to enjoy it. These ruins, these relics in the landscape. And for what? When the endless growth stop. He said of Pokemon that it is his childhood. All of those experiences and memories went into the making of Pocket Monsters. And since he's the god creator architect of the world, he can make the animals better, more compelling than any real life creature ever could be. And of course, he can also make them endless. There are over 1,000 Pokemon and counting, though he was only creative director for the first 3 generations of Pokemon. So we can't blame him for the glut of Pokemon, including, as we will discuss later, some of the dumber ones from the later generations.
We have a section later dedicated to some of the laziest Pokemon design. But this stuff is a huge hit in Japan first. Japanese kids love this. And so the executives at Nintendo say, I think we can take this and localize it and really make it work in America and the rest of the world.
And export it. There's our Walt Disney of Pokemon. Let's turn to the video games.
Yeah, certainly seems like a nicer guy than Walt Disney.
Bro, the guy who invented the cockfighting video game is a nicer guy than Walt Disney.
Yeah, the video game is the original product, right? So this is the first thing to come out in Japan, and everything kind of stems from the Red and Green game, originally released in Japan in 1996. You know, if you remember playing this game, you remember like these sort of barely recognizable, horribly pixelated Pokemon, but that's actually their original form. They were created as those pixelated forms in Red and Green / Red and Blue first, and then the more colorful canonical designs came later from those pixelated designs, which I think is really interesting. Those original 150, the designs that you saw in the Game Boy was actually what came first. They were designed in the Game Boy and then later with regular art, because it would have been harder to take art and then bring it to the Game Boy later because you were so limited in terms of the number of pixels you had. Remember, there's no color on the original Game Boy either.
Yeah, why bother calling it Red and Green version? There's no color yet.
I feel like I'm so susceptible in this episode to taking certain details for granted just because I'll assume that everybody knows things about Pokemon. But yeah, there's 2 nearly identical versions of the game that are released, except for there are different Pokemon available in each of the versions of the game. Slightly different Pokemon, different drop rates for Ekans and Sandshrew, or for Nidorino or Nidorina. It's sort of made to be inherently social, that you'd be able to trade with someone who had green or someone who had blue.
And of course, there's like 2 readings here. You can take the benign reading, which is it was seen as something social. You have to go out in the world, much like the trainers in the video game, and trade with a buddy using the link cable. Or you can take the cynical view, which is we need to sell more copies of this game. Let's make our literal catchphrase, gotta catch 'em all, an imperative. You must catch them all. And we have given you an impossible task with a singular game.
Yeah, very funny how catching them all, it's the motto of the franchise at first, because there's too many Pokemon now, they got rid of that. But a very small part of the actual gameplay involves catching all of the Pokemon. Very rarely are you even rewarded for catching Pokemon, except for when Professor Oak's aide will give you some token.
John, since you're a bit younger than us, did you play the Gen 1 games at all? Red or Blue?
So actually, I got my first Game Boy Pocket from my older cousin, and he gave me both Red and Blue. I actually still have them to this day. And I was going to say, with the Japanese versions, they released Red and Green. Blue was actually the upgraded version of the Japanese game that was released in Japan as Blue. And then when they released in North America, they decided, okay, we already have all these copies. Let's just release it as Red and Blue instead of Red and Green.
Mm-hmm.
When Pokemon Red and Green come out, which is the versions before Blue sort of fixed things later, they were outside of the top 10 games. It was given a 29 out of 40 review and marked as the 4th most anticipated game. So not something that came out with like a ton of fanfare, but gradually picked up steam in Japan until it achieved the levels of popularity that would be seen in America a few years later. But I think Pokemon is really interesting when talking about the life cycle of the Game Boy as a product, because the Game Boy comes out in 1990, and Pokemon doesn't come out in Japan until 1996. So it's near the end of its life cycle. It's already most of the way through. And yet, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, those 3 make up 3 of the top 10 of the Game Boy's highest selling titles, which is very odd for things released so late in something's life cycle. It really extended the life of this handheld that wasn't really all that successful until the Pokemon games came out. But Pokemon really gives Nintendo's handheld gaming like a shot in the arm.
And I love the behind the scenes of the Nintendo corporate hierarchy here, where it was an afterthought. Nintendo thought this game was weird. Most games for the Game Boy fell into one of 3 categories: a platformer like Mega Man or Super Mario, a shoot 'em up like Contra, or a puzzle game like Tetris. And Pokemon is this RPG that is slow. It's meditative in comparison. They had so little faith that they barely marketed it, which I think is in stark contrast to how Nintendo will treat this intellectual property later, once they realize what a hit they have on their hands. And I love the story of the organic spread of Pokemon, the game, across Japanese playgrounds, where sales are slowly starting to climb, and Nintendo was forced to just scramble and partner with other companies to create tie-in products to cross-promote the title, like the anime and the manga, after the thing has already come out. They didn't realize what they had.
Yeah. As an example of this, by the way, you guys remember Nintendo Power?
Yeah, the Nintendo Gaming Magazine. I still have an active subscription.
Nintendo Power publishes an entire guide to Pokemon for kids. And they give the game a 7.2 out of 10 review, which is so funny to me. Nintendo Power is a magazine owned by Nintendo giving its own game a 7.2 out of 10. Nintendo Power apparently has more journalistic integrity than like the Washington Post at this point. And I think speaks to like a certain Japanese rating system that is much harsher than our own.
We need to bring that over here. So this first gen makes it to America September 28th, 1998 as Red and Blue, 2.5 years after they debuted in Japan. And Yellow is released a year later. Now, it's significant that in Japan, it was games first, then tie-in products. But the Pokemon craze hit America like, forgive me, a tsunami. It had everything all together. It had the show, the trading cards, and the video game all basically land at the same time, which I think helps the intensity of the Pokemania craze that we see.
Yeah, it was like D-Day. It was everything all at once, planned in a boardroom. September 1998. TV show, game. We're going to hit kids with everything we got. The winter of 1999, like we're in gym class, Ben and I, and someone comes to school with a Ponyta and a Growlithe Pokemon card. And I had never heard of Pokemon, but I saw these cards and I just remember thinking, what the hell are these? And how do I get myself some of these? These are the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Tell me more about Ponyta. What is going on?
Why is that horse on fire? Is the horse magic? I need to know more.
Yeah, it took schools by storm. I am sure I immediately ran home and asked my parents to buy me the Pokemon games, to get me the cards. I started waking up early before school to watch the TV show. I was full on multimedia ready for this world.
Mm-hmm.
And just to talk like a little bit informally about the games, you know, as a kid, you have so much downtime, right? You're always waiting for stuff. You're waiting for the bus, or you're on like a long family car ride, right? You're waiting for your parents to pick you up after practice or something. And Pokemon, it just fits so well into all the small moments of your life. Playing this game on the Game Boy, I just remember sinking hundreds of hours into like this world, to the point where when I was playing this game, Red and Silver, over the last couple weeks, I remember every patch of grass, what percentage of Pokemon should be in there, depending on the time of day. And it's just incredible how much all of the details of this game stay with you. It was such a great thing of nostalgia. You know, encountering an Abra who immediately teleports away, or for some reason knowing the elemental like strengths and weaknesses stuck in the back of your brain like spackle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fired up Red on an emulator and I was shocked because I had just downloaded the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. And that is like a modern game. It came out last year. The tutorial chapter of that game is maybe 4 hours long, as it holds your hand and introduces each and every little mechanic, and they show you the little map of the open world with a billion little tasks to complete. There is no way, if you can read, that you could possibly be confused about what to do. And I boot up this game from 1996, and you just go. There's no mission. You're just in your town, and you're like, I guess I'll walk around, then you go in the grass, and Professor Oak says don't go, and blah, blah, blah. They never tell you what to do. Yeah, Professor Oak says, like, fill out the Pokedex, and then gradually you learn what gyms are, and slowly you learn what Team Rocket is, but there is so little hand-holding comparatively to a modern game. But like you're saying, Giordano, I remembered it all. I remembered where to go. As soon as those notes hit of that, like, 8-bit theme song, that was, like, the Proust Madeline moment for me.
Yeah. The main goal of the game is to acquire all of the gym badges and then beat the Elite Four, right? But on the way, you catch a lot of Pokemon, you keep fighting your rival, but a lot of the gameplay is just trying to advance in the world to the next town. And there's always obstacles, which are often beat just by going around and talking to people. I read through some of these academic articles, and their argument was typically that like Pokemon in general is overall positive for children in the sense that the approach that you need to take to beat it is to acquire information about this world, i.e. what to do next by speaking to NPCs or by learning what Pokemon are weak to what and what are effective strategies, and then applying that knowledge to the world, right? So it's like, I have to go speak to people to figure out what should my next goal be. There's a boulder in the way. Okay, well, let me go speak to all the NPCs to see how to get the strength HM. And so in general, I found it challenging as a kid, right? There's a new problem in every town, and I have to go around talking to everybody until I can solve it. A remarkable thing to be able to do on a handheld gaming device in 1998 or 1999. It's crazy when you put this game on your phone now. It's like a 6 megabyte game. And yet, hours and hours of entertainment.
I think I learned that water put out fire from Pokemon. I was 5 or 6 years old. I didn't know how to tie my shoe, but I knew that ground was strong against electricity. Like, I just need to be grounded. Like, that's how I learned some of this stuff, was through Pokemon.
Hell yeah.
There's this academic in that Pikachu Global's Adventure. His research paper is just studying how his son took up Pokemon as a craze. And when his son is playing the game, he's getting so frustrated with his son because his son isn't learning and applying his learnings. He's just doing brute trial and error and rote memorization to get through things. And at one point, he asked his son, hey, why aren't you applying your super potion to the Butterfree? And the child was like, oh, because I'm saving it for the Horsey. And the dad was so excited because he thought his son was finally learning. And the son's like, because Horsey is cuter. He couldn't help his son for academic integrity, but just watching him struggle through this world. So many like great, memorable mechanics in this game. Going into Lavender Town and going through the ghost-infested tower there, waking up the Snorlax, all of these really fun game mechanics. I did find out in research for this episode that they had to change the music in Lavender Town for the American version because it was too dark in the Japanese version and kids were killing themselves, apparently.
So I did some research on that. It was a rumor that was started on Reddit in 2010. There was no found links between suicide in children and Pokemon, but creepypasta on Reddit, or it might have been 4chan, started that rumor in 2010 and it just caught fire. Like, I believed it too.
Interesting. It does align with certain Western stereotypes of Japan, where it's like, oh yeah, they love that over there. They love
they love killing themselves.
Yeah.
It's their favorite. It's their national pastime.
I did want to talk for a second about the missing no glitch, because this is such a profound piece of my memories of Pokemon, because when someone at school first told me about the missing no glitch, it rocked my world. It's the thing I remember the most. Someone told me, hey bro, if you have one rare candy, you can turn that into like 120 rare candies. And so this thing just spread like wildfire amongst children across the globe, that you could fuck with the game and multiply the 6th item in your inventory by 120 something. And because this is a world pre-patches, you sell the cartridge and then that's it. You cannot touch the game again. There is no patching it. It seems so weird now where every game comes out and the idea is, well, it's not done yet, but as people use it and have shitty experiences, we'll fix it later.
You'll pay $100 for your new game that's broken and unfinished, but don't worry about it. We'll fix it in post. And then we'll sell you more stuff through DLC.
And I was always curious how this glitch worked. And so I looked into it for this episode, and I'll give you guys a quick rundown. But basically, the wild Pokemon that you encounter is determined by a buff that your character has. And that buff is determined by whatever region you're in, right? And so if you remember, the way that this glitch worked is you would go talk to a guy in Viridian City who would tell you how to catch a Pokemon. And so when you speak to him, the wild Pokemon that appears for you, your buff, is this old man and his Weedle that he's telling you how to catch. So if you fly to Cinnabar Island and you surf up and down the coast, you'll encounter a Pokemon called Missing Number. Mm-hmm. And it's because they didn't apply the buff until you got into the ocean. And so on the coast of Cinnabar Island, you can encounter wild Pokemon, but you hadn't been applied the buff yet that you would get once you were in the ocean. It was one of the things that was broken with the game. And so it would go back to whatever your last seen Pokemon was, which, if you had just spoken to this man, was this old man. And so the game wouldn't know what to do, and you would encounter this freak Missing No. And it scared the shit out of me.
The avatar was just like a fucked up rectangle.
It was like the sound of dial-up internet, as visualized, basically. So you can imagine a world where some kid is going up the coast of Cinnabar Island and encounters a wild Pokemon, and it's like, oh, hey, why am I encountering like a Scyther here on Cinnabar Island? Or something that shouldn't be here. Oh, you know what? Like, there's probably something broken. How can I fuck with this? Well, what was weird is when that old man teaches you how to catch a Pokemon. That's sort of weird. I wonder how it would handle this. So that's how the glitch was discovered and then spread across the world very quickly. And that glitch was so funny to me because if you raised your Pokemon's level through rare candy, your stats wouldn't go up as much as if you had leveled them naturally. And so I remember reading Nintendo Power Magazine as a kid, and there would be people describing their top 6 Pokemon, and they were bragging about them. They're like, this is my Alakazam, level 99, raised naturally. It was almost like the steroid thing, where you had to go out of your way to be like, no steroids for my Scyther. There was also a glitch to get Mew in the game, which was not discovered until 2003, actually, where you could access Pokemon that were never intended to be released to the public through an extra, I think, like 30 bytes of storage that one of the developers was like, oh, there's like a little bit more space left on this game. I'm going to sneak this in here. Some like low-level employee.
Yeah, I never found that one as a kid. Everybody knew the missing no cheat. And I love that in this like pre-internet age, I didn't Google this. I didn't Google Pokemon cheat codes. It was told to me on the playground. It was told to me through social connection.
Yeah, true. I guess we'll talk more when we talk about the social nature of the game, but I guess we could just speak to the rest of the generations really quickly. So Pokemon Yellow comes out in late October 1999.
Yeah, every generation of Pokemon features 2 at launch. So like Red and Blue, Gold and Silver, Ruby and Sapphire. And then like a year later, there'll be a 3rd version that is some kind of special combined version of the other 2.
This version of Pokemon is modeled after the TV show. And so you have Pikachu that follows you around, and then you acquire like Charmander or Bulbasaur. If you're friendly enough with Pikachu, you could talk to Pikachu and he would be upset with you. Like at first he'd give you attitude, just like in the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
But largely, the same mechanics. And then Gen 2 came out in the year 2000. This is Gold and Silver. And this one, I remember, was a lot of fun as a kid. It was an entirely new world, the Johto region.
Yes. Yeah.
The original 150 Pokemon plus 100 new ones. And then at the end of the game, you would go back to Kanto and get to sort of relive the entire red, blue, yellow experience again. And at the end of that game, you face yourself from the first game. And if you beat him, you win. It sort of makes this really nice and satisfying conclusion where you beat and best yourself from the previous version of the game.
They didn't know if Pokemon was going to be as dominant as it was. So that was almost like hey, if this is our last game, this is the conclusion of the last game. You've gone through your youth through Pokemon Blue and Yellow and Red. And now, you've transitioned to teenagehood, adulthood, when you're going to stop playing video games as much. And you've gone through the circle of life, basically, of Pokemon.
Yeah, my take is that everyone in their childhood played 2 generations of Pokemon. For Giordano and I, that was Red and Blue and then Gold and Silver. And then we put down Pokemon. I was talking to a friend of mine who's younger, might be born like 2000, and he said he played Gen 3 and Gen 4 or whatever, and then he put it away. But like generally that is the life cycle of your Pokemon fandom, that window of when you are like 8 to 12, and whichever 2 games happen to fall in that window are the ones that you probably clocked the most hours in on.
Yeah.
Although, John, you disproved my point because you're born 97, but you say you still played Gen 1.
Yeah, like I played Generation 1, Generation 2, and Generation 3. And then once it got to about 2008, when I was about 12, I stopped kind of playing. But I went back and actually downloaded Pokemon Liquid Crystal. It was a hacked ROM version. And it's a good game. Pokemon Crystal is probably my favorite game. I'll say, Suicune. That was probably my favorite Pokemon when we talked about favorite Pokemon earlier. But basically, I got lucky enough to play 3 generations. And then I played Sword and Shield, one of the newer versions. Terrible game. Like awful. Could not recommend it more.
My favorite Pokemon in that Gen 2 was Houndour and Houndoom. I always loved that Pokemon. The issue with him always is that you don't get him until late in the game. So I remember I got to the point where you could catch a Houndour, which is extremely close to the end of the game. Breeded one to be level 5, because you could do breeding in Gen 2 games. Traded it to my brother, restarted my game so that my brother could trade me back the Houndour and I could use the Houndour as my starting Pokemon.
Nice.
Well done.
Yeah, that's the other thing about these games is that they introduce new mechanics here and there. I'm quoting that AI slop documentary here where like they tinker around the edges, right? They add 100 or 150 every single time. They'll tinker around the edges with things like the day-night cycle was new in Gen 2, then they took it away, then they brought it back. Pokemon breeding was introduced in Gen 2 and that stuck around. Some of them featured double Pokemon battles. Some of them featured mega evolutions that are temporary super evolutions you can do in a battle, but the core mechanic of the game remained mostly the same. I don't know, it's kind of similar to a sports game in that way, where you're just releasing a very similar game every year, but just adding new players, in this case, the Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, the mechanics are mostly minor. You know, I think the biggest change in Gen 2 was you could hold items. Gen 3 did introduce double battles, and then Gen 4 has some depth stuff where, you know, the game's in 3D for the first time. Okay, should we move on to the trading card game?
Yes, let's.
I mean, this was my first interaction with Pokemon. And actually, Ben and I have a bone to pick with everybody about the trading card game because as popular as the cards were, the game itself, I would say, was not very popular. No one was really using the cards as they were intended, which is to battle each other. And this was something Ben and I were tremendously fond of as kids. Like, we would build decks and then play each other with them. And I actually think the fundamentals of the trading card game battle system are strong. Like, it's made by Wizards of the Coast, who made Magic the Gathering. So they're familiar with how to make a card game fun. And yeah, more people should have been playing the card game as a card game.
You can't appreciate the trainer cards on the level that Giordano and I can. Like, if you're just in it for the pretty art, and you're in it for the holograms, and you're in it for the collecting, like, you don't understand that the ideal deck actually has very few Pokemon and far more trainers and energy cards. You fucking rube. You're not appreciating the mechanics on the deep level that Giordano and I were.
Yeah, I remember people, they would bring binders of their cards to school. The booster packs would be sold out at stores constantly. There was absolute Pokemania for these cards. Like, this might have been more popular than the games, honestly. And the book, Pikachu's Global Adventure, has a catalog of problems that these cards caused for society at large. People were stabbed over them. People were hit by cars trying to get back cards that were stolen from them. And they were banned at a lot of schools, which I remember as a kid thinking was unfair. And then as I'm reading the book, I'm like, oh yeah, like, imagine how annoying it would be as a teacher to have to adjudicate ownership of a Pokemon card.
Listen, kids, I'm a ref. I can only call what I see.
Right. Someone's like, oh, he stole my Pokemon card. I'm like, this is how I have to spend my time, is determining. Like,
I gotta teach you math.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's this toxic blend of parents want to spoil their kids with the thing that they're obsessed about, of course, right? Get your kid the latest fad, yada, yada, yada. And then you add to that, if you're a boomer parent raising a millennial child, you know in the back of your mind that some of those baseball cards could go on to be worth something someday. So you have that speculative asset trading bubble, like a proto-cryptocurrency or a tulip bulb of the 17th century.
What is going on? In the late 90s, I feel like maybe there's this reflection of the tech market getting hot where everyone's like, ooh, it just seems like all of our children's toys fads became about value too. Like, I remember so many toys, it was like, oh, these could be worth something one day. Like, you know, you can't take your Batman bank out of the packaging because it'll be worth something one day. Beanie Babies, they'll be worth something one day. Pokemon cards, they'll be worth something one day. Do we still do that with children's toys? Are people like, don't take this Labubu out of the bag, you know, it'll be worth something one day? I just feel like maybe the speculation around children's toys was a reflection of the way that the tech stocks worked at the time or something.
Now we have crypto. We don't need to project that onto fucking children's toys.
True.
I do know that Pokemon trading cards are still, like, I have a buddy that I work with, a couple guys that I work with. They're huge into the Magic the Gathering, Pokemon trading cards, all those. My one buddy just pulled like a shiny Charizard, and it values for almost $1,000. It's like $800 for this one card. So there is still a huge market for that.
It is funny that all those people who were like, oh, Pokemon cards will be worth something one day, like, they were actually right.
Yeah, you hate to see it.
We said that about so many things at the time, like Furbies, Beanie Babies, all of them worthless. However, Pokemon cards are like the one thing that have tremendous resale value right now if they are in pristine condition and you've gotten them graded.
Well, even the stuff now too is like you see those videos that like Costco has a special deal with Pokemon, and there are lineups of people who are waiting over an hour. And the same guy I work with was telling me people will go in, buy $200 worth of cards, and then go to the people in line and sell them for $500-$600. And people will buy them just because they want to take that chance on that value.
Wild.
I don't get it. I don't understand the world anymore.
I remember after swim practice or whatever, my dad would drive me to the card store, and I would just peer through the glass at the holographic Executor or the holographic Charizard and just marvel that you could just buy these cards for like $80 or $40. And I swore to myself that as soon as I was older and had a job, I couldn't understand it. I'm like, these adults, they have money and they're not buying the Pokemon cards. These fools.
Like, they're spending all this money feeding and clothing and housing me when they should be buying me holographic Pokemon cards. Yeah, we got to move on from the remember when.
yeah, remember when is the lowest form of conversation, we know, but remember the dark versions of cards that came out?
Come on.
Like the
That's because remember when is the lowest form of conversation.
You know, you had to acquire this stuff through booster packs, which is kind of like gambling as a child. It does give you the rush of gambling, right? There could be anything in those booster packs.
It'd be a boat.
So Wizards of the Coast no longer makes Pokemon cards, actually. I think they, after like 3 generations, they had to give it up because they started to patent some of the mechanics for Magic the Gathering. And Pokemon and Nintendo got very worried about this because it seemed like they were trying to patent some of the basic card mechanics of the Pokemon game. And so they shifted over to a different manufacturer away from Wizards of the Coast. So the newer cards are actually not made by Wizards of the Coast. And it's really interesting how much Pokemon delegated and like shared ownership of this thing in order to spread worldwide much faster and localize much more effectively. But one more funny things I do remember about the cards is it was so hard to get them at one point in like 99 or 2000. You could walk into any gas station or variety store in our hometown and buy fake Pokemon cards.
Oh, yeah.
The color on the back was just never quite right? It was always a little too purple, not quite blue enough. You would see these on the playground, these clear forgeries, but just crazy how fast a black market for knockoff Pokemon cards developed.
The last thing I'll say on the cards is another bone to pick with society that Giordano and I have. One of the 120 Pokemon video games out there, because they really did so many spin-off and tie-in products, is a Pokemon, the trading card game, the video game. And it's the same basic mechanic. You have 8 gym members that you need to beat, but this time you're playing the card game on your Game Boy. And this game rips, or at least I remember it ripping as a child.
It's so fucking sick. Yeah, you would win booster packs for beating trainers, essentially, and then build your own deck, and then get to use that deck to play other people in the world. One of the most underrated Pokemon games out there, definitely. Pokemon the trading card game for the Game Boy.
Pokemon the trading card game, the game. I forget what it's actually called.
Shout out to that game.
Can I add one thing? So in 1999, these 2 moms from the States tried to sue Pokemon because their kid wanted the Charizard.
Mm-hmm.
So this one mother spent $2,000 in Pokemon cards and then decided, oh, it's a gamble. It's teaching kids to gamble. These card packs were $5. You're the one who spent $2,000 to buy all these packs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how it's kind of currently coming back with all these EA Sports games. Like, you can't play these games online anymore because these kids are just getting their parents to buy these online packs and these online upgrades.
Right. Isn't that how like all online games work now? Is you have to like buy booster packs essentially?
Yeah. So basically Pokemon set the precedent for it.
Shout out to our friend, by the way, who I think was ranked #1 in Ontario growing up for his Pokemon trading card game deck, which only had, I think, like 8 Pokemon cards in the deck. And the rest of it was trainer cards designed to move you through your deck as quickly as possible. And then the few Pokemon that he would put in there were like Chanseys and other Pokemon with, I think she has like 120 hit points, you know, sort of breaking the meta a little bit with his approach.
I challenged him to a match deep into high school. I was way past Pokemon fandom, but I dug out my cards, I built a deck. And the trouncing that I was handed by this friend of ours, I I didn't claim a single of the 6 prizes. It was embarrassing.
All right, let's talk about the Pokemon TV show and movie. This is the show about our 4 friends on an epic adventure. Now, supposedly, this story is based on a movie, Stand By Me. And this movie is on in, I think, the Gen 4 versions of the game, if you look at the TV.
I believe it's Gen 1.
Oh, really?
It's on your TV. It's the first thing. If you press your TV, it says Stand By Me is playing.
But yeah, what a beautiful escape for a bunch of kids who are not allowed to go very far from home, but you have this entire world to explore. Let's introduce our characters. So we have Ash, right? Ash Ketchum. Everybody remembers this guy. He's got the hat and the jacket and the sort of Michael Jackson nose, you know. He's very earnest, very self-sacrificing. This is a guy who is 100% committed and enthusiastic to become a Pokemon trainer.
Mm-hmm. The pilot ends with him willing to sacrifice his life to save a Pokemon. He's one of these people who should be way more misanthropic than he is because he clearly likes animals more than he likes people. A lot of the movies end with him crying holding one of the Pokemon, from what I recall.
Right, yeah. I'm just remembering, that I guess the first episode of the TV show and the movie basically end the same way, with Ash sacrificing himself to save Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very green and clumsy. He's a 10-year-old kid, so he's always screwing something up, right?
Mm-hmm.
He gets Pikachu instead of the other starting Pokemon because he throws his alarm clock in his sleep thinking it's a Pokeball and wakes up too late to get a Pokemon. And throughout this TV series, he is competing with Gary, his rival. Gary will frequently write on the polls like, Gary was here, Ash is a loser, and is constantly teasing Ash.
Also, hilarious name for them to choose in 1996.
Yeah.
This is the ultimate boomer male name. There are no more Garys in the Anglosphere.
Yeah.
That's a name that came and went.
Any details about Gary that come to mind, Jonathan? Anything I might have missed?
Well, no, so Gary is he's Professor Oak's grandson. He's kind of the cool, popular, he's the man. Gary's the man. At 10 years old, this guy has cheerleaders who follow him around, right? It's crazy, right? Like, I wish I had that much clout at 10 years old.
Well, he's a Nepo baby,
He is. He 100%, yeah. And so everything Ash does, Gary already did it. When Ash has 5 badges, Gary has 7 badges, right? And speaking in the first movie, Gary actually battles Mewtwo before it's Mewtwo. Gary does everything first, right? Ash is he sleeps in, he's following the breadcrumbs, right?
And you get to name him in the video game.
Yes.
Your rival is a character that you get to name because fucking Biden-brained Professor Oak forgets his own grandson's name, and you get to be like, you get to say what his name is.
Okay, so let's move on to Misty. So Misty is the second most prominent character in the TV show. Ash meets her, I think in the first episode, he ruins her bike, right?
Yes, yeah.
They always have this very adorable relationship, the two of them, where they posture as if they can't stand each other, but they clearly are very close friends. Jonathan, you were telling me that Misty sort of has a crush on Ash, but she shows it in a very immature way where it just manifests itself as often just getting angry with him and teasing him.
Yeah, because they're children, Giordano.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very much a 10-year-old middle school crush where there are a lot of theories that she likes him, but he's almost just way too naive to even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the second Pokemon movie, this girl who is clearly flirting with Ash is like rubbing it in Misty's face, and Misty's getting all jealous. So I don't think that's an official theory. That's my theory, having watched almost 300 episodes now. Misty has a crush on Ash, and Ash is just too naive to realize it.
Can I ask, since you've watched so much more than we have, you know how in Harry Potter, they start as children, then they become teenagers, and they start to get more romantically involved?
Yeah.
Do the Pokemon kids ever show any signs of aging into adolescence and have any kind of on-screen romance?
Not really. Like, especially in the English North American version, they keep them very childlike.
Mm-hmm.
In the Japanese version, they have them mature a little bit more as time goes on, but they still are meant to be very childlike. There's a whole theory that in the first episode, when Ash gets attacked by the sparrows, he actually dies. So that's actually the first theory, is the first episode he dies because later in that episode, he sees a Ho-Oh, and the theory is Ho-Oh brings his soul back to life so he can live out the rest of his life, but now he's trapped in this never-ending story being a 10-year-old.
Damn, that's dark.
There's a theory he dies in the first Pokemon movie, and that the whole tears of the Pokemon don't actually bring him back. Like, he's actually dead. I think Ash has died about 5 or 6 times in the show.
But yeah, how would you describe Misty's character? I think in general, she is a little bit more mature than Ash. She often wants Ash to be better. She can be a little ditzy herself. I think she's often more into like the cuteness of Pokemon. Any other characterizations that you would say about Misty?
Yeah, like I would say she's strong-willed. She actually is the gym leader, but her 3 other sisters who are older. They treat her like a little kid. So I think she wants to be more mature. And she does. She pushes Ash when Ash is trying to train for the Indigo League and the Johto League. Ash goofs off all the time. And she is the one who's like, look, man, get it together. You need to train.
Right.
But Ash is just constantly like, oh, I got to do this. But she's the one who wants to get Ash on track to do what he wants to do.
Gotcha. So she's got a better work ethic and better sense of goals.
Yes.
And now we got our third character here. Everybody remembers Brock. Brock is an older guy with our 2 young children. No, I mean, he is old. He's not 10 years old. He's a little bit older.
He's 15.
And he is horny. I mean, that's his most defining characteristic, is like any woman that he gets a whiff of in this world.
Oh, yeah.
He turns into Pepe Le Pew. Or not quite. But he needs to marry any woman who comes into his line of sight.
Listen, he's auga maxing, okay? He's bashing his head in with a mallet, okay?
His story, Jonathan, you were telling me, is that he is a gym leader.
Yeah.
But his dad left to become a Pokemon trainer and put him in charge of 10 children that he had to then take care of. So apparently Brock's horniness runs in the family. But then Brock's dad actually encourages Ash to beat him so that he can come back into the picture and say, Brock, I'm relieving you of your duties, go on with these 2. And as a result, Brock is very used to taking care of people younger than him. And so he's like a nice companion for these 2. He often cooks for Ash and Misty.
So he's actually the first gym battle that Ash faces. And his dad I don't even think they say he goes to be a Pokemon trainer. They just say his dad just leaves. Brock's got, 7, 8, 9, 10 brothers and sisters. So he's used to being a homemaker, but he doesn't want to be a gym leader. He actually wants to be a Pokemon breeder.
Don't forget, Ash, I've been studying to be the world's best Pokemon breeder.
And then Ash loses to Brock in the first gym battle, and this random, shadowy figure teaches Ash how to beat him. And then when he beats him, Brock's dad is the guy and comes in. He's like, oh, son, go have fun. Like, he's a terrible father.
And it seems like, what percentage of episodes do Team Rocket make an appearance in? Is it every episode, basically?
Every single episode, Team Rocket's in. Yeah. Team Rocket's always the villain. It's always Jesse, James, and Meowth.
Yeah.
And there's other episodes that have other Team Rocket members who are just more competent people.
I would hope so.
I remember from the show, they're always trying to kidnap Pikachu.
Yeah.
What is the end goal of Team Rocket? And I was curious, so I looked up their motto, because I remember they had a rhyming motto that they would declare on most episodes. And I am so much further from the truth. Prepare for trouble, make it double. To protect the world from devastation, that sounds positive. To unite all peoples within our nation, that's a little alarming. To denounce the evils of truth and love, that one came out of left field. To extend our reach to the stars above, Jesse, James, Team Rocket, blast off at the speed of light. Surrender now or prepare to fight. Meowth, that's right. I am no closer to understanding what is the goal of this criminal organization.
So that's actually just their mantra. It's funny because they can't catch Pikachu, but in other episodes, they are good at swindling other people and getting other people's Pokemon. But Pikachu really is just the white whale. They can't catch him.
If they bring Pokemon to Giovanni, in theory, they get paid.
Okay.
That's what they're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah.
They need to steal Pokemon and bring them to Giovanni.
Aren't Pokemon everywhere?
Yeah, well, Yeah, I guess
aren't there aren't there thousands of Spearows that we saw in the first episode that they could capture?
they want the strongest and the best Pokemon to train. They don't want just like random level 3s. That's why they keep going after the Pikachu, because they realize something is special about this Pikachu. So they want the best of each Pokemon.
And yeah, the third member of their little trio here is Meowth, the lone talking Pokemon of this world, who I found so funny because Meowth is clearly like from Brooklyn, like 1930s Brooklyn. Yeah, oh, I'm the greatest Pokemon on Earth.
Yeah.
Prepare for the waste of it, you know.
Yeah.
Clearly sort of modeled after Bugs Bunny, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I do love that James, who is said to have grown up rich, talks with the most effete, ridiculous accent.
What are you talking about? Yeah, these two, they're very camp, you know, Jesse and James, I find in general. A lot of the comic relief in the show comes from how flamboyant and ridiculous these two are.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I really enjoyed about the TV show, by the way, is the opening 1 minute of the first episode is Ash watching Pokemon compete, fighting in a stadium. And then the view transitions from this Pokemon fight to a TV that Ash is watching, which I thought was like a fun metatextual reference to the fact that we're taking this video game and bringing it into the TV format. We're watching the medium change in Ash's eyes and for the audience as well.
And it's how the video games start. When you take control of your avatar, you're sitting in front of the TV in your bedroom.
Yeah, it's even the same two Pokemon that are battling in the game are battling on Ash's TV.
Cool.
And in terms of the general structure of the show, this must have been the easiest fucking show to write. Because animes, from what I understand, there's often a monster of the week format.
Yeah.
Frequently, an episode of Pokemon will introduce one of the 151 would have a story built around that one particular Pokemon. A little adventure where we meet a new hero or what have you. And yeah, there is a plot, like Ash slowly gets through all the 8 gym members or whatever, plays through the plot of the game. But there's a lot of fucking filler in Pokemon.
Yeah.
You got a lot of raw material to work with. You got 151 of these motherfuckers, and we're always adding more.
There are a lot of filler, right? They have episodes where they introduce a new Pokemon, and they do a good job. The one where they introduce, I believe it's Ghastly and Haunter. They have a whole thing about Lighthouse Cove and how this Pokemon died. It passed away waiting for its owner. And so they do a good job with that. But the entire second season, both the Orange Islands, that is all filler because they were waiting for the next game to get released. Mm-hmm. They based the first season off of the original game, Red, Blue, Green, Yellow. And then they were like, okay, we don't have anything to base this off of, and we want to try and keep it as true to the games as possible. So the Orange Island really is just filler episodes until they get into the Johto League, which would have been Gold and Silver.
Right. The Orange Islands are the only thing to appear in only the TV show.
Yes.
Right? We never got an Orange Islands video game or anything.
Yeah.
And this is not unheard of for anime. In my brief career watching anime, I watched a bunch of the show Bleach, which was cool. And then I literally got to a season that I looked up on Wikipedia, and it's like, this season is a filler season because the manga on which the anime was based hadn't been released yet. And I quit watching the show entirely. I said, fuck this. But yeah, I think the main significance of Pokemon the show is that the genre of anime, the medium of anime, obviously predates Pokemon by decades. And Matt Alt in that book has an entire chapter on the history of anime called A New Anime Century. I think it's significant because he closes his chapter by referencing Pokemon because of what Pokemon did for anime in terms of bringing it to the mainstream. You know, the first anime TV series in Japan comes out way back in 1963. 1979, we get Gundam, which is like a mass hysteria event in Japan. Then in the 80s and 90s, we get some pretty sophisticated and dark animes like Akira, which rocks, or Ghost in the Shell in 1995, which was the biggest budget animated film Japan had ever produced. Neon Genesis Evangelion. Miyazaki wins the Oscar for Best Animated Film for Spirited Away. But it's not necessarily these dark, contemplative, mature, sophisticated anime that bring it to the mainstream. It is the kawaii cartoon that's meant to sell a video game. For a lot of people, that was your first experience with this genre. And then maybe hopefully later you discover Neon Genesis or whatever the hell else.
Yeah, we'll talk more about localization later in our globalization theme section. But some of the episodes of this show, very funny. They were banned in America. I mean, actually, the first mention of Pokemon in America is in a New York Times article that doesn't even name Pokemon until the end of the article, because it's mostly concerned about the fact that there's a show in Japan that is giving children seizures, which is, I think, the thing that you see played with a lot when people are spoofing Pokemon in the early 2000s, like in The Simpsons or in Family Guy or South Park. There's a Porygon episode. Jonathan, you watched this episode, right? Did you start to feel the urge?
So I watched this in college, and I knew about this episode, and you can only find it in Japanese. There's no English dub, because as soon as it happened, they pulled Pokemon from syndication for, I think, 4 months. And I somehow got on a website that definitely gave my computer viruses to watch it. And I told my roommates, I watched it with them. I said, guys, I'm going to watch this. Check in on me. Like in 20 minutes, like if I'm convulsing, check in on me. And honestly, it wasn't bad. I could see as a little kid, you just staring at the TV, being like, oh, wow. And I kind of was blinking and looking away, but there is like a couple scenes where the lighting is just insane.
Yeah, it's cool just to see all the little ticks of Japanese animation that are not native to America, and just seeing how a different culture can convey emotion in animation slightly differently, like putting a number sign, the hashtag on someone's forehead to indicate that they're like annoyed or angry. And you're like, oh, I guess that does kind of get that across. And, you wouldn't see that in Western animation. I thought that was interesting. I will say that what's interesting that the Marxist school says that the executives in Japan rob children of agency all over the world by marketing to them. But when I was a kid, I think Pokemon was one of the first things I remember thinking that I had agency in being interested in, because I would wake up at 7 a.m. to watch Pokemon with my brother. We'd wake each other up and be like, it's fucking 6:55. We got to get downstairs right now. And we'd go down and watch Pokemon. And so many of my early memories around personal choices that I made revolved around my decision to consume Pokemon. I wasn't waking up any earlier than I had to, unless it was to watch Pokemon. Or like the first possessions that I feel like were mine and like I owned and could trade were Pokemon cards. It is funny how it gives you this small semblances of adulthood. I get to choose when to wake up and like when I have things I have to do or what objects I own.
I get to choose which Pokemon to start with.
Right. True.
I get to choose the name of my character.
What a seminal moment in my life, waking up with my brother to watch Pokemon. Truly, some of the things I remember the most fondly from grade school.
Let's talk about the movie. Pokemon : the first movie : Mewtwo Strikes Back. That's right. There's 2 colons in this title. Mewtwo is the big bad of this film. He had already appeared in the TV show. That's why it's Mewtwo Strikes Back.
Okay.
And it is revealed in the opening that this Pokemon Mewtwo has been created in a lab by the crime boss Giovanni. He's hyper intelligent. He can talk via psychic powers. He doesn't have a mouth, so he just talks with psychic abilities. He goes out and he just destroys. We see him annihilating Pokemon, destroying buildings, working for Giovanni. And he is obsessed with his purpose. He keeps asking, what is my purpose? And Giovanni says, I will tell you your purpose. And he says, please give me my purpose. And then he rejects his purpose of destruction. There's some very, very funny repetition in this film. But he eventually decides to free all Pokemon from their human captivity.
Yeah, he says his grand design for this world at about the 37-minute mark when he says, quote, humans and Pokemon can never be friends. This is Mewtwo's worldview.
He's a Pokemon liberationist. He's more in the Malcolm X model than the Martin Luther King model.
Yeah, so Mewtwo puts on a fake contest. Ash has to go there and defeat Mewtwo's army of clones. Mewtwo has cloned one of every Pokemon, and he sees these clones as being superior because they don't have masters, right? They don't have to fight for humans. Some of the things I thought were funny about this movie, it's just like funny how often people in these shows have like Brooklyn accents, given that they're living in a fictional world. But I guess just in voiceover work, any kind of distinctive feature is good. Brock's still horny in the movie, still hasn't found the one. It's funny too because one of the Nurse Joys has gone missing. And he's looking at the missing persons poster and is like, ooh, who is this beautiful woman? Oh my God, And it's just the idea of somebody getting horny over a missing persons poster.
Getting turned over the back of a milk carton.
Come on, man. Like, there's a time and a place. But then Brock gets horny a second time for the administrator of the tournament. I started a counter. I'm like, I'm going to count how many different women Brock lusts over. I turned it up to 2, but then I had to turn it back to 1 because it turns out that Nurse Joy is the tournament administrator who's been kidnapped. And so Brock's horniness actually comes in clutch in identifying the missing woman.
Mm-hmm. Team Rocket, of course, make an appearance where all of the trainers who have been invited to Mewtwo's tournament, they need to get to this island. And Mewtwo uses his psychic power to make a big storm happen. And the humans are saying, you can't get on there, you'll die or whatever. And all the Pokemon trainers, they just hop on their water or flying types and they make their way to the island, no problem. Our 3 Dumbo Bozo heroes jump onto a wood Viking longship that is crewed by Team Rocket, dressed as Vikings, doing thick Swedish accents and making hack jokes like, oh, what's a Viking? Oh, I hear they mostly live in Minnesota or whatever.
Yeah, I was so curious how the Japanese version of this looks. Like, do they have Swedish accents on Japanese? Does that come through? And then I'm like, they're certainly not making a Minnesota Vikings joke.
Konnichiwa, watashi wa no namae wa. Just Swedish chef on the Japanese syllables.
But Jonathan, you watched the Japanese version and you were telling me that this part is just almost entirely redone for the American market.
Yeah, basically in the Japanese version, there really isn't much banter between them. And I guess the reference is actually these 2 folkloric warriors. And the irony is the one guy showed up late to a battle and then fought him with an oar as a sword. So the irony in this Pokemon is that these 2 guys are now rowing this boat together, but there's no like Swedish. It's not meant to be Vikings. It's meant to be Japanese folklore.
Okay.
About these 2 guys. So
interesting. Eventually the Team Rocket wooden ship capsizes in this sea. And Misty uses Starmie and Ash uses Squirtle to just swim to the Mewtwo Island. And Ben's just yelling at the screen like, why isn't this plan A? Why wouldn't he just do the thing that everybody else is doing? Like, Misty is literally the gym leader of the water gym.
Mm-hmm. So the movie is basically an extended battle sequence of Mewtwo's clones versus all the trainers.
And I'll say, by the way, tight 75 minutes, this movie. Very nice.
Yeah.
Makes it really easy for us.
Yeah. At the climax of the battle, the clones and the non-clones are fighting one another. And wouldn't you know it, it's a stalemate. And Mew, the mythical Pokemon from whom Mewtwo was cloned, Mew appears. And Mew and Mewtwo are fighting each other. They're just glowing orbs smashing into each other. A lot of pew 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 going on. How are we going to break this stalemate? Pikachu, that special Pikachu, realizes that they shouldn't fight at all. And he does an act of passive, non-violent resistance. He channels his Martin Luther King in the face of Mewtwo's Malcolm X. And lets the clone Pikachu just kind of beat the shit out of him.
During this final fight scene, they drop one of the weirdest music choices I've ever seen in a movie. From a series and movie that often uses orchestra music to just this acoustic made for the movie song. We'll put a little clip in here unless I hope we don't get dinged for the
In case it's copyrighted, I will read some of the lyrics. It goes, "Brother, my brother, tell me, what are we fighting for? We've got to end this war. We should love one another. Oh, can't we just pretend this war never began? We can try, brother, my brother."
Brother, my brother. That's what it sounds like.
It's beautiful, really. It's really beautiful, I will say.
I was a puddle of tears on the floor.
Yeah.
It was way too on the nose. It's just describing exactly what's happening in the film.
Yeah. This movie was okay, I would say. Not great. Not the worst. But I will say I enjoyed. It's funny how much of like Pikachu's emotion can be conveyed through just him saying his name. It's sort of like that improv exercise where you just say A or B, like they did in The Sopranos, but you just have to like inflect it. Like Pikachu can just put a lot of emotion into just saying his name. I didn't like how they had to say everything 4 times. Like they would show you 10 seconds of Mewtwo creating his stadium for the clones to fight the regular Pokemon. And Brock would be like, oh, wow, a stadium. It's like, yeah, bro, you watching the same movie as me here? We know.
Yeah, you know how there's that filmmaking rule, show, don't tell? The Pokemon movie shows and tells so that you can be absolutely certain you don't miss a single thing.
I also thought like the concluding message of this movie, like it just never really found a great grasp of what it wanted its point to be, because it seems like one of the final lessons of the movie is Ash saying, oh, you know, we shouldn't make Pokemon fight, right? Like Pokemon shouldn't fight.
It's your entire society.
This is the whole thing in your world, right?
Yep.
Ash is the actually first Pokemon member of PETA.
Well, it's called Pet P in there. People for the Ethical Treatment of Pokemon.
Yeah.
I mean, this is mostly like a late 90s, early 2000s thing, but the ethical question of cloning has zero salience in modern society. And it's just funny how much we thought about if cloning is ethical around this time. You saw it in a ton of movies, genetically engineering things in cloning, like Gattaca.
Or The Island.
I really think that people of the turn of the millennium thought that this would be a much more salient political and ethical issue going forward, and it isn't at all anymore.
Yeah, the climax of the movie, Ash sacrifices himself to try and stop the Pokemon from fighting. All the Pokemon cry and bring him back to life again. And the movie gets kind of weirdly existentialist with it, where Mewtwo sees that it is not the circumstances of your creation that matter, but what you choose to do with your life. And then he flies away and decides not to take over the world, destroy the world, and enslave the Pokemon to himself or whatever his endgame was. But it is better than the 17% it has on Rotten Tomatoes. It is at least a solid 47%.
I watched this movie, this and Pokemon 2000, and even the third Pokemon movie. I watch it probably once a year.
Damn.
I love these movies. They're meant for children, guys. Like,
sure.
Hey, like I said, I enjoyed it, and I thought the 75-minute runtime was being honest about how long it should be.
Yeah.
This wasn't a 2-hour ordeal. And I thought seeing the combat was often fun. You know, you get to see the moves, which, you know, in the Game Boy game, you just see like a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see it fully animated. Jonathan, you mentioned in general that the TV show and the movies are often much darker in the Japanese versions.
They're a lot different. Like in the Pokemon movie, it's actually in the Japanese version 10 minutes longer, and that 10 minutes changes the whole movie. In the first 10 minutes of the movie, both the American and the Japanese version start off with, oh, we were trying to find Mew, and they're searching through the jungle. In the American version, it almost goes straight to Mewtwo being a full-grown adult and breaking and then, you know, causing chaos. In the Japanese version, they actually have Mewtwo growing up through the cloning process. And in his mind, he gets telepathically connected with the other Pokemon. So there's a Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. And if you notice in the movies, the Charizard, Venusaur, and Blastoise are the first three Pokemon that come out of Mewtwo's cloning process. And there's also a young girl called Amber 2. And so you find out why Dr. Fuji, who is the head scientist in this project, why he's so invested in this cloning process is because his daughter died in a car accident, and he's actually trying to bring her back. And so throughout, it shows Dr. Fuji's wife leaves him because he's so obsessed with bringing his daughter back. And his wife is like, you can't bring her back. She's gone. You need to move on with your life. And so through this telepathic connection that Mewtwo as a child and Amber have, Amber shows Mewtwo the beauty of life and what it means to have a life and what a gift it is. And so in the Japanese version, Mewtwo really isn't the bad guy. He's just going through this existential crisis of, what am I? I'm a clone of something else, but where do I fit in? Because I have all my own thoughts and ideas. And actually, in the Japanese version, Mew is terrible. They don't give him any lines in the American version because they're like, oh, look at this cute cat-like, you know, Pokemon who's flying. In the Japanese version, he's calling the clones are like, they're filthy, they're disgusting. Basically, he's wanting to kill all clones. And it's so much darker from Mew's side. But on Mewtwo's side, he's actually a very deep and introspective character. And he doesn't want to kill everybody, and he doesn't want to take over the world in the Japanese version. He's just trying to find his place in the world. And so it's a complete difference from America is like, oh, here's a bad guy, here's the good guy. Japanese version is like, where do we fit in with the world? And there was a 5-part radio broadcast about the origins of Mewtwo in 1998 in Japan. That's why these characters like Amber 2 existed in the Japanese version, but not in the English version.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about localization later, but I remember reading that American localizers often felt the need to make things like who is the bad guy a lot more clear. All right, let's move on to the manga, the comic books. This was another big pillar of the franchise in Japan. I would say that in America, these mattered far less. I don't recall many people reading the manga here. They did exist, but they were sort of interesting. You know, I think the humor a lot more times had to do with toilet-based humor, stuff that Martin Luther would have liked, you know? A lot more poop jokes. From what I understand, Pikachu is taking dumps in the manga, you know, and then they're laughing at how big they are.
Do they also shock you if you step in them? Are they electric dumps?
They're making dick jokes, which makes sense because when the manga was released in the United States, it was made by a former hentai drawer. I'm sure it inherited some of that DNA. Before we move on to themes, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to some of the other media formats that Pokemon was in at this time. Pokemon Stadium, this was a big game released in the year 2000. I mean, it wasn't a great game. I would say that it brought to life some of the battles from the Game Boy versions of the game. On their own, not really that memorable. Loved seeing Pikachu and Jigglypuff in Super Smash Bros., as I mentioned. And one last shout out to Pokemon Snap, another underrated Pokemon game. It had such a novel game mechanic. Most games, you're like trying to kill people. Pokemon Snap, you were like trying to get the best pictures of Pokemon. And for the N64's limited hardware, did a really good job of identifying which pictures were good, rating you on your composition and how well you would center the photographs, and had some like really interesting mechanics that I think went a little uncelebrated at the time.
Yeah.
It had such like a cult-like following, whereas people love that game.
There's nothing like it, you know?
Yeah.
Pokemon feels a little bit like playing the Final Fantasy for the NES, I guess, but there's really nothing like Pokemon Snap. Okay, let's move on to our themes and big ideas. Our major theme and our largest one is the concept of globalocalization. What is global localization? Well, it's when you make something for a global audience. And so the idea here is when they made Pokemon, they weren't saying, let's make this thing that's for Japanese people and the rest of the world will love it. They said, let's make a version of this that everyone in the world will think is their own, right? So I'm quoting Gail Tilden here, who is one of the people responsible for the American localization. She said, quote, "We try to keep American children from thinking of Pokemon as being from Japan. This requires localization, not to hide the fact that Pokemon is made in Japan, but to convey the impression that these are global characters. Therefore, we do not want to make Pokemon American either. We want Pokemon to become global characters that children all over the world will find familiar." So I think that's really interesting. This idea that Nintendo, as a global corporation, said, let's make this appealing to people all over the world. Let's make it feel authentic no matter where you are, which is kind of shitty in some ways. You can't just make something inherently Japanese. I think the way that the book often phrases it is we need to take the odor of Japanese-ness off of the show.
What you're telling me is that Pokemon is for, in the words of Alex Jones, globalists.
Absolutely. And so they made so many fascinating changes from the Japanese version, which I'll catalog a little bit here. It's funny being a fly on the wall in some of these meetings in the book where they're talking about, okay, well, Americans, they don't like cute things. They like really strong and buff things. So we're thinking Pikachu should have like big tits. You know, that was like an actual change they considered.
It was a tiger with big tits. They tried to bulk it up for Americans, bigger, better, bulkier. And the end result was a Pikachu that looked like a tiger with huge breasts.
Hilarious, because as we'll talk about momentarily, I think the kawaii nature of the creatures is a massive part of the global success of this thing. Maybe the most distinctly Japanese, quote unquote, cultural trait of this thing is actually what made it successful.
Yeah. I mean, they walked that one back, thankfully. They took out a lot of references to drinking. I think some magic mushroom references were taken out. A lot of sexual innuendo was taken out, probably for the better.
Especially with Misty's character, they took a lot of stuff out for the American version.
I mean, there's that episode where some old man comments on Misty's like developing breasts and is like, "Ooh, I can't wait to see this girl in 8 years," you know?
Yeah.
That's the episode where Professor Oak comes up to them and he's like, if you guys need money, you should have Misty compete in a beauty contest. And then in order to beat them, Team Rocket has James enter the beauty contest with big fake tits and beats her. But yeah, most of the time, Nintendo opted just to remove the sexual content, I think, knowing that it wouldn't really play the same way in America. Some other interesting localizations I thought were at the end of the episode, they kind of do the final message, like, hey, what did we learn here today? And from what I understand in the Japanese version, a lot more of the time it's about the relationship between Ash and Pikachu and how that's developed, whereas the American version speaks to Ash's heroism that's been accomplished. I think what makes this so weird, though, is despite the fact that it's Japanese, it's made eventually with Westerners in mind. And so as much as it's a Japanese cultural product, it has this strange quality of knowing that it's trying to appeal to everyone all over the world. Like, compare this to Doraemon, which was a very popular Japanese cartoon cat from like the 1970s that never really made it to the rest of the world because it wasn't made with this globalization in mind. Whereas Pokemon always had its eye on the prize of appealing to the rest of the world. And so it's literally changed when it goes to other countries. And yeah, they remove a lot of the Japanese landscape. The presence of tatami mats and like Japanese housing features are all stripped away. The names of the Pokemon themselves are changed with the exception of Pikachu. I thought this was an interesting bit on the way that Pokemon was globalized. You know how like the Pokemon in English are all sort of puns? Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, Charmander, Salamander, but with char, because it burns, right? And like you go through all the Pokemon and you make up these names.
Some of them are lazy. Ditto. Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime, he's a fucking mime. What do you want from me?
Yeah, some of them are better than others. But I was looking at all the Pokemon names in French and in German. We were looking at them together. And it's just crazy that they bothered to do this in a bunch of different languages. Now, I think it's like German, English, French, and Spanish that they did this for. The rest of the countries outside of Asia just use the English name.
Yeah.
Some of them are really fucking funny, too. The German word for lickitung is Schlurp, which I think is awesome. The German word for Snorlax is Relaxo, which sounds like something you would prescribe to an anxious teenager. We gotta get you on the Relaxo, buddy.
It was funny, the people who were responsible for coming up with the English names, they were talking about their process. And they're like, yeah, usually it was like a word from the animal, a prefix or suffix from the animal, you add to that whatever element they are, or like some quality about them. So like Cubone, okay, he's a cub and he has a bone, They said they were stuck all weekend trying to name the legendary birds when someone finally cracked it by being like, hey, how about Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, Uno, Dos, Tres?
Mm-hmm.
Snorlax apparently named after a joke from The Simpsons.
Yes. Snorlax was based off of Chief Wiggum having a card. It said like Escolax, and the guy who made it loved The Simpsons and was like, I got it. He snores and I like Chief Wiggum. So let's just mash these together.
And then Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan named after Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan.
Nice.
I don't think that often a lot of American media is made to seem local everywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Pokemon has this grand design of, okay, we want this to be palatable outside of Japan because we have our eye on the rest of the world.
But I think what's also interesting about it is that it is the product of this particular moment in history where people are gradually consuming more and more Japanese media. Because obviously they don't whitewash the entire fucking thing. They keep the animation style. There's still a lot of Japanese elements to it. They're trying to kind of split the baby here, but this is something Matt Alt talks about a lot. Over the course of 90s, Final Fantasy VII comes out a couple of years before Pokemon. That's a huge Japanese game. Over the 80s and 90s, as globalization really starts to get going, you have all kinds of Japanese pop cultural successes that are heading to the West. So you can think Tamagotchis, you can think Hello Kitty, you can think some of that art house anime I mentioned. Pokemon is just kind of the proof positive that these things weren't flukes, but they were the result of some very intentional craftsmanship from Japanese creators. And this is what you're saying, Giordano. We're going to keep just enough Japaneseness to make it exotic and interesting, but localize it enough that it's not putting people off. This is probably the most successful product of globalization here, where by the end of 1999, this series had earned $5 billion, which is roughly equivalent to the entire US game industry by itself.
Wow.
And just quoting Matt Alt here, he says, it's the culmination of, quote, cultural streams that had been flowing since the end of World War II, now merging into a raging flood. So not just cultural, but technological. Portable tech. The Game Boy itself, in its name, is an obvious reference to the Walkman, another portable technological device that you take with you and do your thing. The monsters are Kawaii, with Pikachu being the most celebrated little Kawaii creature since Hello Kitty from Japan. That Hello Kitty.
Yeah, there was a lot of backlash to Pokemon at the time. I feel like this sort of gets misremembered because now it's just like, Pikachu, he's like Mickey Mouse. Everybody loves Pikachu. But Pokemania in 1999 and 2000 did cause its share of detractors. Time magazine, which was a lot more important in the year 2000 than it is now, did a cover story on Pokemon in 1999. Satoshi's first interview ever in America, and it's titled Beware the Pokemania, and describes it in one of the opening paragraphs as a pestilential Ponzi scheme.
Damn.
People were freaking out about this, sort of in like the same way they freaked out about Harry Potter, but it's just a catalog of all the ways the children are robbing, stabbing, and cheating each other for cards. I do think part of the backlash was related to it being a foreign product.
Of course.
Yeah. Some of the backlash I saw involved that it was encouraging violence, and they went so far as to tie it to Columbine, which I thought was so funny. The idea that some kid is going to watch Pokemon and then be like, I want to bring a Voltorb to school. I don't know a single person who is into bear baiting because of Pokemon. Maybe Mike Vick was a big Pokemon fan.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, I mean, we laugh now, but give it a few more Pokemon generations. There's going to be a Pokemon that's just a gun with eyes.
Yeah, Glockachu.
I saw that there was a Christian minister, actually, who was cited for saying Pokemon was anti-Christian. I mean, everything in the 2000s was fucking anti-Christian somehow. Harry Potter, Pokemon. But he said that it, 1, encouraged violence as a source of power. 2, promoted the theory of evolution. And 3, also spread new age concepts like reincarnation and psychic power. But here's a quote from the minister. Paganism and demonic possession run rife through Pokemon and Japan. Therefore, parents should be alert to this Japanese invasion sneaking in under the cloak of multiculturalism. Quote, strange as it may sound to American ears, demonic possession is no longer confined to distant lands such as Japan. I know that I believe in reincarnation now after I saw... Jonathan, help me out here. Which one of the Pokemons does reincarnation?
Yeah. Ho-Oh, Celebi. Even in the first Pokemon movie, Ash gets brought back to life through the tears of the Pokemon, right? So
yeah, I actually did see a different Christian minister saying that he thought that it was a very Christian movie because of the nature in which Ash sacrifices himself and comes back to life.
Yeah.
And from a Christian perspective, don't Ghastly Haunter and Gengar prove the existence of an immortal soul in some way, shape, or form?
If religion is going to rip on Pokemon, they need to have something else to offer children, right? They need trading cards for the saints. You can't just offer nothing, right? Give me the John the Baptist holographic card, right? Or something.
Samson's a real bummer of a card because he starts out strong, but his evolved form with the cut hair is actually much weaker than the original Samson.
Judas isn't that strong of a card, but if you get the Dark Judas card... and you attach to him 3 pieces of silver, or how many?
Steel type energy. Noah was something of a Pokemon trainer, if you think about it.
Right. Yeah, he had a very similar idea to Mewtwo.
He was the original Pokemon breeder, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Mewtwo and the Pope have similar views on cloning. Any other backlash you guys want to talk about before I move on?
I would just say there was a very funny lawsuit involving a New Jersey parents group suing the American distributor for artificially limiting the supply of Pokemon cards, charging them with racketeering. Just calling back to what we said in our discussion about the cards. It's just a speculative asset to these fucking people. They're not even playing the game.
True. It's capitalism that creates a scarcity for Pokemon cards. We could print as many holographic Charizards as we want. Every child in America could own a holographic Charizard if we wanted to.
If we only seized the means of producing the Pokemon cards.
Just moving on from the backlash and getting back to globalization a little bit here. In the 2000s, Pikachu's Global Adventure made the argument that anime replaces the geisha and the samurai as the aestheticization that we have in our mind of Japan. And I think it was interesting that in the 2000s, we got Memoirs of a Geisha and Last Samurai, which were kind of about this. Both of those made by white people.
Classic.
Some final thoughts on some of the backlash to Pokemon and how hysterical parents were at the time. And I will say that, yes, the primary action in the Pokemon games is battling, but the secondary focus of the world often is like the study of Pokemon. You're given a Pokédex in which you're meant to go out and learn about these things and then apply those learnings to making the experience more enjoyable for yourself.
Okay, let's wrap up our globalization theme here.
Quoting Pikachu's Global Adventure carried him not from Japan to the world, but from Japan to the United States, where he was given a makeover before sending him on to the rest of the world. It is Nintendo of America, Hasbro, 4Kids Entertainment, and Warner Brothers, and not their Japanese counterparts that hold the rights for selling Pokemon products in most markets. The version of the Pokemon cards, television shows, and movies distributed everywhere but Asia are translations of the American rather than the Japanese versions. The fact that Pokemon reached most of the world via the United States means that the global Pokemon empire is not quite the challenge to American pop cultural global hegemony that it first seemed to be. Pikachu, at least for a moment, may have kicked Mickey's butt, but American corporations, including Hasbro and Warner Brothers, earned a large share of the profits. So that's kind of, I think, our final thesis on the global localization here, is that as much as it represents this Japanese coming onto the world stage culturally in a major way, it often is doing so through the United States. And I think speaks to the position of the United States at this end of history moment in the year 2000, the lone superpower, that so much of Pokemon that the rest of the world got was first gone through the lens of America.
Yeah, that's global capital, baby. This is what we mean when we're talking about global corporations.
I don't know that that's good. I kind of feel like it might be more authentic for us to take in a Japanese product as they would have wanted it. That's more interesting to me than someone making a product with what they think I want in mind.
Yeah.
It's like, make your own thing and then let me judge that on its merits.
Yeah, the original Final Fantasy VII that came out for the PS1 was a huge runaway success. And for a lot of people, the fact that the text was kind of awkwardly translated made it be like, I'm consuming something from a culture that's different from my own, and I'm still enjoying it. And I don't quite get it. I don't have like all of the cultural signifiers down to understand everything behind this, but I can still appreciate this. Or even something like Akira. Akira's a great fucking anime, but like the pacing is weird. It doesn't conform to what we would expect from a movie with a 3-act structure or whatever. It's not flawless if you measure it by our metrics, but to put everything through this mold results in stuff that is inherently going to look the same everywhere and kind of erase a lot of distinction, right?
So that's my one complaint about Pokemon, is I wish they would have just committed a little bit more to like being Japanese.
Well, I know all over the world they had episodes that were banned in certain countries, and in South Korea, they actually banned every episode that had anything to do with Japanese culture. When gym leader Erica wears kimono, they banned that specifically because she's wearing a kimono, right? Another episode has 2 Pokemon that are sumo wrestling, and they banned that episode because it had sumo wrestling in it.
Wow.
So anything in South Korea that had Japanese heritage in the Pokemon show, they banned in South Korea.
Weird. I wonder why.
So, speaking of Japanese-ness, let's talk a little bit about Kawaii. Because similar to how the Pokemon cartoon was most North Americans' first experience with anime, Pokemon was also probably their first experience with the concept of Kawaii. And I think it's really impossible to overstate the importance of Kawaii to Pokemon. Because these little critters are so fucking cute looking, there's huge branding opportunities across the world. And I think it's like a worthwhile intellectual exercise. If you compare them to Digimon, that are distinctly not kawaii, you weren't slapping a fucking Were-Garurumon on your like backpack or whatever. You know, you want the cute little guys. And I would say, even among the Pokemon, the third of all phase, like the fucked up monster guys, don't get nearly as much airtime as the cute little guys at the beginning of the evolution. Kawaii is one of these hard things to define. It's usually described as cute, but our word for cute has all these different meanings. You know, it can mean something like shrewd, like don't get cute with me. It comes from our word acute, which can mean a little suspect, a little unthreatening. And kawaii doesn't have these connotations. Things that are kawaii are things like puppies, kittens, babies. Until just about 100 years ago, kawaii was just a patronizing descriptor that you'd use in the sense of say, oh, isn't that just adorable? It doesn't have an opposite. It doesn't have a word like ugly. It's just kawaii kunai, literally unkawaii. It is not an adjective. It is a state of mind. It's like love. You know it when you feel it. And I think a great way of illustrating this is with Hello Kitty. Hello Kitty doesn't have a name. Hello Kitty is just a cute little kitty that they printed on a backpack with the word hello underneath of it. And it just became her name. She has no backstory. She has no character traits. She's a cat in overalls with no name. And to this day, Hello Kitty is one of the world's largest licensed properties. It is as iconic as Snoopy or Mickey. Still, Hello Kitty earns $500 million a year in global revenues. That makes the company that makes Hello Kitty the 8th largest licensor in the world, ahead of the NFL, number 12, Pokemon, number 30, and Playboy, number 45. Wow. So sex and violence may sell, but not as much as cuteness.
Incredible.
Yeah, I just think the reason that Pokemon was able to have so much success is because these little critters are so cute. They're like little Hello Kitties you get to play with and battle with. So even if you don't understand the lore of the story, I mean, I was drawn to them and the art as a child, as millions of others were.
Yeah. I found it interesting. There's this guy, Yamamoto, who wrote an academic paper on what Japan can offer the world economically in the 21st century. And he's thinking about the new knowledge economy and how eventually, you know, you'll be priced out of manufacturing by developing nations. And he's like, well, what can Japan do? And he considers, quote, for this reason, Okada concludes that cuteness may be Japan's key to acquiring foreign capital in the 21st century, which is like a crazy thing for your country to live off of, to be like, they're the world's leading producers of cute things.
I love that his name's Yamamoto, and I've just made it official in my head canon that he is related to the Admiral Yamamoto of the Second World War. And this is the version of Yamamoto that we get, is like, we're going to raise foreign capital with our cute little sand shrews and Cubones.
We're not allowed to build the battleships anymore, but get the Hello Kitty factories operating at full production.
All right, couple rapid fire smaller themes here. Environmentalism, right? We already said it up top when we were talking about Tajiri's life. He made his own nature when there wasn't any anymore. And I really do think this is some Rosebud shit. He wanted to create for children the digital version of the childhood they no longer had. He lost his childhood innocence and his childhood forests, so he made some new ones. And I think, from what I understand, in some of the later generations, like in the third gen, there's some more environmentalism content. There's a Team Aqua and Team Magma who want to expand the seas and lands respectively that are meant to kind of represent climate change. We have this digital world that's starting to reckon with a changing environment, which I think is, yeah, you can't help but reflect the world we live in and the climate crisis that we're in.
Yeah, that comes through in the games and TV shows that there's this, oh, we need to live one with nature or whatever. I would say that the criticisms are tepid at most. Ash is not blowing up a pipeline with a Voltorb or anything.
That'd be fucking sick. And then another theme that I felt like I kept coming back to is social versus isolated gaming, right? And I am going to get on one of my hobby horses now, where the internet has ruined social gaming. It's ruined split screen on the couch with your boys.
Yeah.
I think you can listen to like our 4th ever episode is on Halo, where I go on this old, this is an onk rant, okay? Apologies. But like now we all need to buy copies of the game and we all need to sit in our pods and we need to play online and it sucks. But I think a huge part of Pokemon's success was that it was always an inherently social game. The joy that comes from trading and battling with friends, using that fucking link cable between your Game Boys. Yes, gotta catch 'em all is a call to consumerism and consumption, but because of the mechanics that they have built, it also encourages connection and community.
This is, I think, one of the first games to really use that link cable. And Satoshi, this is one of the things that he really pushed for, was he imagined little bugs crawling across the wire going from game to game.
You needed to trade Haunter and Kadabra in order to evolve them, and they were two of the most used Pokemon.
Really a game that had playing with other friends in mind in order to do something as basic as fulfill the fundamental command of gotta catch 'em all. And I will say that as much as it encourages social gaming, I think because of its nature as something made by an otaku for otakus, I do think that this is fundamentally a solitary game. I do find that Pokemon fits into all the nooks and crannies of an introvert's life. Like I mentioned, all the time you had to yourself as a kid. Now you have something Pokemon to occupy your time. Not only can you watch Pokemon at home like Transformers, but now you can take it with you on your long car ride on your Game Boy. You can take the Pokemon cards to school or read about it in church. It fits into all the small moments of your life to enjoy alone.
Yeah. And of course, Pokemon was not above the trends of gaming, and now everything is fucking online. No more link cables. Bring it back.
Okay, Jonathan, Ben and I have had this question repeatedly throughout this process. Are they eating the Pokemon? Because it seems like historically they ate them. You know, Farfetch'd is described as being delicious and almost being hunted to extinction.
Yeah.
As is one of the shark Pokemon from a later generation. They're eating the fin. They're eating the Meowths. They're eating the Houndours.
It'd be funny if that was the slur they used in their world too. Like, you know, in Johto they eat Eevees, right? You know, the Pokemon virus, that came from Hoenn at a wet market that was selling Sandshrews.
Well, I mean, Farfetch, he walks around with like a leak, I think, too. Like
yeah, he's asking. He wants to be eaten.
That, you know what?
Motherfucker comes with his own seasoning.
Oh no! I hope nobody eats me. I
don't think they are. Like, basically in the show, all it shows is them, you know, Brock's making food for the Pokemon and making actual food for the people. And a lot of it is, like in the anime, Japanese sushis and rices, and they call them donuts in the English version.
One of the funniest translations is they're clearly eating onigiri and they keep referring to it as a donut. And they're like, I love my donut.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like they have regular animals in the Pokemon world that they delineate from Pokemon. Like there are regular animals, which they eat, and Pokemon, which are like regular animals, but they can learn moves and be caught and stuff. And those are only sometimes eaten by mostly bad people, unless it's a Magikarp. It seems like more people are willing to eat Magikarp.
Yeah, Magikarp is...
Motherfucker doesn't learn tackle to level 15.
It's a delicacy in Pokemon world.
All right, quick talk on the class politics, just because this is Remember Shuffle. There are not a lot of class politics in this show. You know, I tried to look, but from what I could tell watching the TV show, for the most part, there's like a little bit of class resentment. Like Ash hates kids who went to private school. I'll put the clip in here.
Wait, there's more. Student entrance fees and tuition are in keeping with the highest standards set by Pokemon Technical.
You know what that means, don't you? It's one of those snobby private schools only millionaires' kids can go to. Oh, that really makes me mad. Where is this place anyway?
But you get a lot of that from Ash where he's like, I don't like rich people, which is good, you know, but not a whole lot of Ash understanding class politics. You know, in Harry Potter, we talked about how house elves are doing all the labor in this world. And it does really seem like Pokemon are doing a lot of the labor in this world. Yeah. You know, like Machops are always working the construction site. They're always working at the power plants.
Yeah, Mr. Mime cleans Ash's mom's house. And there's the whole theory about how Mr. Mime is actually Ash's dad because he can learn hypnosis. And there's a whole theory about how he hypnotized Ash's mom. And he's Ash's dad. That's the whole theory.
Damn.
It's a very out there one, but one I enjoy. Probably my favorite one.
Yeah, you may think you'd never fuck a Pokemon, but what if he hits you with one of these?
Yeah. Ben is doing the mime glass box. Let's move on to racism. So, okay, obviously it's a fucking hack point to bring up that Jinx is racist. This is a conversation everyone's been having for 20 years. But I do want to talk about it because there is like a little bit more of a funny wrinkle to Jinx being a blackface racist character because of the facts that something I didn't know is that when Jinx is introduced in the TV show, which is in a Christmas episode, I think it's called like Jinx no Christmasu. So Jinx as a Pokemon is inspired by voodoo folklore, right? That's like the basis, the psychic type. And it was banned not just because of the way that Jinx looks, but also because Ash and Misty bring Jinx from a tropical island to Santa's workshop at the North Pole, where they learn that all of Santa's laborers are all Jinx. So it's like, not only do you have this blackface character, but also they provide all of this unpaid labor for a white man.
Yeah.
Talk about global localization here. The Pokemon world has both the transatlantic slave trade and Santa Claus.
True. They really made this for an American audience, and they were like, damn, and you banned this one?
Yeah.
We put Christmas and the slave trade in.
Those are two of your favorite things.
We really thought we cracked it in there.
The episode name is actually called Holiday Hijinks too, which is just like that, just cherry on the cake, right?
Another thing that I saw was that a lot of times when someone is horny in the TV show, it's because they are somewhere
primal, primitive.
Yeah.
Right, like the Safari Zone or a tropical island. That's where they meet that old man who's obsessed with Misty's breasts. Or like in the Safari Zone episode, there's a primitive child who's obsessed with Misty's breasts.
Yeah.
Here's the section we got that's just called Miscellaneous Musings. This is something I think I probably read online. I don't think I can claim it as an original Ben take, but Professor Oak is clearly fucking your mom in the game, right? You walk out of your house, you walk into the grass, and Professor Oak comes out of your house to get you out of the grass and bring you to his lab. He then sends you on a seemingly never-ending quest to capture all of the animals in existence for his research project, leaving just him and your mom alone in Pallet Town. You and your rival may be closer than you think. You may actually be blood relatives. Yeah, I mean, I just have all these little questions that are just, I thought it'd be kind of funny to ask these questions of a very simple product, right? How does the economy work in the Pokemon world? I get that Pokemon trainers are their athletes, but how does the economy stay afloat? Is there just a finite amount of money that the trainers pass around and eventually give to the marts? What jobs are there? How does the housing market work? There are only 2 domestic structures in Pallet Town. How do they keep everyone fed? Is a dead mom part of the Cubone life cycle? Do all Cubone have dead mothers? I don't know, just musings that I had. But of course, we have to close with the cherry on top of our episode before we turn to our echoes in the culture. What the fuck is up with some of these dumb new Pokemon?
Yeah, to quote Nick Mullen, you know they got a Pokemon that's just a set of keys?
That would be Klefki.
Right. They got real lazy in some of these later generations. My God, I had never heard of some of these bad boys, but you know they got a Pokemon that's just a set of gears?
Clink.
I said that to my brother Hunter, and he was like, I'm like, oh yeah, they got some lazy Pokemon, like this Clink Clank. And he's like, no, I love Clink Clank. He's so strong.
You got Vanillite. That's an ice cream cone with eyes. And I think there are multiple ice cream cone ones. I think Vanillite's actually the evolved form. Love Disc, spelled Luvdisc. It's a heart-shaped disc. And my absolute favorite is Garbodor. It's just a pile of garbage with eyes and a mouth.
You know where that Pokemon is from, by the way?
Where?
It's from the New York City in one of the Pokemon games.
Let's go.
There's the garbage Pokemon in the New York City of Pokemon that attacks you in the sewers.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, there's a Pokemon that's just like a chandelier.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's called Chandelure.
Chandelure. Oh, they're really reaching on that one.
And then the pre-form of it is called Lamp Int. Yeah.
I love Lamp Int.
You know, it's funny that the Christians got so mad at Pokemon for introducing the concept of evolution, because all of these Pokemon are based on the concept of intelligent design. Nothing evolves to be like a chandelier, right? There's no natural selection that results in you looking like a chandelier. That is intelligent design at work.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's my issue with all of these Pokemon, is the original 150, you can imagine them evolving in the wild, and I'm using little e of evolving, to be in that form. But like, how did something get to be just a set of gears? Or an ice cream cone? Yeah. It's so clearly like man-made.
Yeah, that's what, when I played Pokemon Sword and Shield, I'm like, this is terrible. They ran out of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do our echoes in the culture.
According to the anime slop documentary I watched, since that first video game, there have been 120 different Pokemon video games, 1,300 anime episodes, and of course there are now over 1,000 unique creatures. The card games and the show are still going on as of 2024. So it's not really an echo. It's just the sound has continued to happen. There's no echo of it yet.
Yeah, Pokemon is still happening. They're opening a theme park in 2026, like a Disney World style Pokemon theme park. And the games are still some of the highest selling games on mobile phones and on the Switch.
There were echoes along the way.
Mm-hmm.
The rash of Pokemon imitation products that propped up shortly after. Fox Kids was like, all the fucking kids are watching the WB. They're watching Pokemon. We need something to compete with this. Like, get us anything. We'll translate it and show it to these kids, which is how we got Digimon, which we thought we would talk about more, but we're out of time. Maybe in a later episode. A good show in its own right.
Maybe Patreon.
Or on Patreon.
Yeah.
Or Monster Rancher, another show I enjoyed as a kid.
I actually just 2 months ago watched the entire Digimon series too. So if you guys, I watch cartoons now. That's all I do.
Oh, hell yeah.
The Digimon were funny because I remember they would evolve into just having like a bunch of rocket launchers on their back.
Yeah, War Greymon.
I mean, they can also talk, which obviously opens up your narrative storytelling potential in that they can say more than their own fucking names.
It was a good show. Very good show.
You know what I think is an interesting exercise for people is try and name a single Digimon.
Garurumon. Ask me for a second. I fucking dare you.
Name a second one.
Where Garurumon? Do not ask me for a third.
A little echo in the culture too. There was a lot of parodies at the time. We watched some SNL sketches that were really, really bad. But the South Park parody episode, Shin Pokemon, not bad. Kind of mocking the consumerism element of Pokemon. I thought that was kind of funny. The Pokemon theme song being, you got to buy it, you got to buy it.
Pokemon. Also, they called their shot in terms of making fun of the lazy monster design because one of the Chin Pokemon was just called Shoe. And then 20 years later, we get the fucking keys and the gears and the ice cream cone Pokemon.
True. I like that Kyle comes to school every day having bought the previous day's medium of Chin Pokemon only to find that it's no longer relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think honestly, for me, the biggest echo in the culture with Pokemon is sort of just mainstreaming anime and the otaku lifestyle. Maybe a nudge in the direction of the nerd culture that we're going to see become so mainstream by the end of the decade, where everybody is like a self-described nerd, right? We're taking this thing that sort of encouraged people to have an otaku worldview, someone who becomes obsessed with something like a pop culture element. And I think that really becomes very mainstream by the end of the decade and certainly moves people towards consuming more Japanese cultural products.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think we get the mainstreaming of weeb culture without Pokemania in a bunch of people's childhoods.
Definitely. It was, what do they call weed? The gateway drug or whatever?
Yep.
So my closing thoughts. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of chinoiserie.
Whoa. Hey, yo.
There's nothing wrong with that word. I was at the Victoria and Albert Museum recently in London, and they had this amazing, like, European chamber robe that was made to look like a kimono, and it was from the 1500s. And so it really speaks to how the West has loved Japanese aesthetics forever. We always love to take something from Asia and just marvel at how different and interesting it is in its exoticness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even back in the 1500s, we're like, damn, I want to look like this, right? And I had the same reaction when I saw that ponytail. There was something about it where I'm like, damn, it's cool as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And there's tons of stuff at the Met that is like this over the last 4 centuries, honestly. And the term for it is chinoiserie. And it's just meant to be something that invokes Asian aesthetics, right? And this word literally translates to Chinesery, but it represents all of Asian cultural influence in general. We've always been obsessed with seeing aesthetics in a different way. And Pokemon is in some ways the chinoiserie of the birth of the millennium, right? This is what it looks like in the year 2000. It is a multinational corporation doing a global localization of its highly successful Pocket Monsters series.
And that's an amazing take, Giordano, that I love. And it dovetails nicely into this line from Oscar Wilde. This is where that guy, Matt Alt, got the title for his book, Pure Invention. So it's the late 1800s. Japan is modernizing like crazy, is about to do imperialism all over East Asia. But the Japan that the Euros knew is the one that you're talking about. It's the one of arts and crafts and kimonos and vaguely arts and crafty looking Japanese stuff. And Oscar Wilde said the whole of Japan is a pure invention, right? There's the Japan that we imagine in the West that is in total contrast to the actual like lived experience of what it is like to be there in Japan. And I like this contrast too between like, we have this fixation with the exotic, with the foreign, but deep down, it is a global capitalist market enterprise. It is Nintendo via Hasbro and Warner Brothers at the end of the day. Nothing has changed. Nothing ever happens.
No. What makes this so quintessentially 2000s is the idea that it's made with an American audience in mind, right? And then transported to the rest of the world. I really think that a lot of Japanese media up until this point was made for Japanese people first and then exported.
Right.
Pokemon has this strange quality of being made different from its intended local audience, global audience in mind. And I think that's honestly like how a lot of media works now. Like when Disney makes a movie, they sure as hell make it with certain other countries in mind.
Yeah, 100%. I hate it here. Anyways, on that happy note, in that we all live in the same country and it's called global capitalism and it sucks and everything's getting worse. But yeah, that's been our Pokemon episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We keep putting up these fucking marathon ones. We need a short one soon.
Right, yeah.
Thank you as always for listening. Please like, please subscribe, write us a comment, engage with the program. Any weebs who listen, tell us all the things we got wrong. Any otakus who want to gatekeep our peasant-like knowledge.
Or even better, if there is an example of something that we didn't know about that we said, like eating the Pokemon, leave a comment mentioning the example that reinforces a view that we already have without contradicting us. That would be fun.
That would be fun too. You can be like, oh, I love these takes. Professor Oak definitely is fucking your mom.
So yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Arigato gozaimasu. And big arigato to our guest, Jonathan, who came by to fill us in on, obviously we can't watch all 300 episodes of the TV show. So we're really happy to have him.
Oh, I got 1,000 more. So I'll be done it in about 10 years.
Yeah.
I was excited when I saw George was going to be doing an episode on Pokemon. And yeah, I figured I could spread a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of love about one of my favorite childhood memories. So
hell yeah, man. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. We know it's been a long one. As always, thanks again. Check out our Patreon if you like. Got a really fun episode on the history of the Soviet Union that just went up. The first part in a series of indeterminate length, probably 2, maybe more. And huge thank you to our guest, John. Thank you for coming on the pod.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Ciao.
Peace.
You know they got one now that's just a set of keys.
Is that so?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's just a ring with keys on it.